Hello and welcome back to Jack Knives Reviews. I'm of course your host, Jack Knives. Today I will be reviewing the Netflix original adaptation, Wednesday. Wednesday is a mystery show based around the well-established Addams Family characters. The story follows Wednesday Addams going to Nevermore Academy, a school specializing in outcasts, rejects, and monsters. Within the halls of Nevermore in the adjacent town of Jericho, there are more mysteries, darkness, and twists that could even be too much for Wednesday to handle, and may require her to do something she dreads the most: asking for help and making allies. When I first heard they were doing an adaptation based off of the Addams Family, I was really just kind of like, okay, and? I mean, it's been done so many times that at this point I'm just kind of like, okay, it could be good, it could be meh, but I was pleasantly surprised with how good this was, and how different it felt, and yet familiar. It was directed and produced by Tim Burton, and had Danny Elfman. Like, that blew my mind when I first found out going into this, because this feels like early Burton. In fact, what's interesting about this series is there's parts where it feels like early Burton and parts where it feels like later Burton. And it kind of has like a perfect balance. And I'm sitting here thinking, Tim, why don't you do this? You know, do it less Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and more Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands. And that's what I get a vibe from this. So despite what a lot of people think, the original Addams Family movies in the 90s were actually not made by Tim Burton. They were actually made by the guy who made Men in Black, which kind of makes sense because it gets more of that kind of vibe to it. But what I liked about this was it did its own thing while also staying true to the source material, which is what good adaptations need to do. It did something different. And at points, maybe a little too different. Jenna Ortega plays Wednesday. The problem with driving an entire series around a character like Wednesday is Wednesday as a character is very, very stone-faced, cards to chest, and hard to read. But Jenna Ortega, holy crap, like, she did a fantastic job as Wednesday. I mean, the problem is the gold standard is following in Christina Ricci's steps. And what Christina Ricci did was she was both cynical and serious at the same time. You could never read her emotions. You could never read what she's thinking. And I believe Jenna Ortega took that to a T. Like, she followed it verbatim. In fact, having Christina Ricci on staff, I'm honestly would not be shocked if Jenna Ortega actually got tips from her on how to play Wednesday. But she did her own thing. That's the important thing. She followed in the footsteps of Ricci, but did her own thing, which is exactly what you need to do as a performer. Follow, do not copy. There's a huge difference. There's also a lot of side characters that I really like. Honestly, the whole cast was really interesting because they each brought a different dynamic to the characters. Now, there were a couple of characters on the side that kind of just blended in the background because they were so generic high school-y with, yes, monster twists, but they were just kind of there. But it never really halted any performances or, you know, changed things too much to make it unwatchable. It just kind of, they just helped move the story along. So one of the major controversies that the series arose was having Luis Guzman play Gomez Addams. See, a lot of people of my generation are used to Raul Julia playing Gomez because he was suave, confident, cocky, and just cool. But that wasn't how Gomez actually was in the original stories. The original stories, he was a creepy, criminal, mysterious, weird guy. And his creepy, ugly visage was counterbalanced by Morticia's beauty and grace and disturbingly silent attitude about everything. Even the original 60s series, that version of Gomez was more crazy. Like maniacally crazy. I mean, you listen to the theme song of the Addams Family. They're mysterious, they're spooky, they're altogether ooky, they're weird. The whole point of the characters are that they're weird. They're abnormal, and it's their normal. Same thing with the Munsters. Their normal is our crazy. One personal major issue I have with this series. It's not the cast, and it has nothing to do with the set, it has nothing to do with the series as a majority of a whole. It wouldn't bug me so much if it wasn't about a specific major thing about the story. This does not get into any major spoilers, but for some reason, I don't know why, they decided to make Wednesday psychic. Like, they made it so she could have psychic visions randomly appear when she touched items. It is like the dead zone. You touch certain things, you start seizing up, and you start seeing something. That's Wednesday's powers. And normally, I wouldn't care about that sort of thing for this kind of a fictional series. Except, here's the problem. This is the Addams Family. The whole point is that they don't have gimmicky, powery stuff. They're normal to a point where their normal is our crazy. They don't need a gimmick. Like, you have an entire school of monsters, creatures, all of that. Wednesday should be the outcast because she doesn't have those powers. You see my point? It doesn't make sense from a story perspective why she has these powers. And then later you find out apparently Morticia had these powers all this time, and no one has ever mentioned this ever before. And I'm trying not to let this kind of stuff interfere with my critique of it or interfere with the actual enjoyment of the series, but it's a pivotal part of the story that she sees these psychic visions, because these are key clues to what's going on in the story. It just bugs me, because I'm like, you have never once established in any context of the Addams Family that they have these weird psychic abilities. I mean, yeah, they survive stuff that people shouldn't technically survive, but I always just chalk that up to cartoon logic. There's a lot to love about this series. It is an enjoyably dark, fun series. It's one of those series that, yes, it does do some boundary pushing a little bit, but nothing too much. It's a series that young teens can enjoy without getting too scared or anything. It's got stuff that preteens could enjoy, and honestly, I think a lot of people can just enjoy. It seems like a fun series that you could just turn on, watch it all the way through, and honestly enjoy. I'm really hoping to see more for this series and see what's going to happen with the oncoming series. And hopefully it gets more and more popular, and hopefully we get better seasons to come and more creatures, monsters, and who knows, maybe other Easter eggs or different things that they could do with the adaptations of the Addams Family, because there is a lot of source material. I give Wednesday 4.5 out of 5. Have you seen Wednesday? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, I'll see you next time.